Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com.
I think people will be able to tell pretty quickly that Adam is out of sorts. We were joking before that he'd be all over the place and no one would notice, but just hearing the, my name is George, my name is Tom, my name is Adam.
What you're talking about, there's no reason to say that I'm anywhere off my game more than usual. It just takes a slip of alcohol.
I think for the record, you're not drunk, right? You are just exhausted from being up all night playing pretend bang bang in the bush.
Yes, bang bang, of course.
That wasn't meant to sound like as much of a euphemism.
Not a weird sex act.
I was just trying to make it sound like you were playing silly children's games.
Yeah.
But then that just sounded, pretend bang bang in the bush. Yeah, moment it was out of my mouth, I was like, nah.
Tom, I'm glad.
Okay,
I'm glad that you recognise the hilarity of your own comment.
I have three jokes.
One, I was not playing bang bang in the bush by myself.
So
pretend bang bang as well.
Pretend bang bang in the bush.
I have three jokes. Okay, pretend bang bang in the bush. Title of your sex tape, number one. Pretend bang bang in the bush. That was game 7 in Squid Game. And number 3, pretend bang bang in the bush. Adam was preparing for the inevitable war with Taiwan. That was the.
Look, if there's any lessons to be learned from pretend bang bang in the bush, don't go to war with Taiwan is probably the answer out of it.
Probably don't go to war in general.
In general, because death follows you around like a.
If you can avoid it, would recommend just as someone for his entire life who, when confronted with the option to go to war and to not, and having chosen not, can recommend.
Yeah, big fan of not going to war.
That's pretty good. Yeah. But, minimal instances of, night terrors due to past traumas.
Mm.
I think I'm doing pretty good. So, would recommend. 9 out of 10 dentists recommend.
But
don't go to war.
I'm not going to war.
Yeah. Tom, have you...
Sorry, are you snacking while we're doing the show?
I was eating some peanuts, yes.
Okay, yeah. Okay, just clarifying. Sorry, Adam, go ahead.
Was it obvious? Okay, so I will cease.
Adam?
The jokes are just writing themselves. I was doing laser skirmish in the bush, where I did die several times and can confirm that if that was a real war, I would have died 3 times in the space of 24 hours, which is definitely physically possible. I
was going to say, if it was a real war, you would just die once, presumably.
Well, what's the third time? Because isn't it you? What's the old adage? You die twice. First is your death, the second is the last time anyone says your name. So what was the third that could have happened in 24 hours?
I don't know, Tom. I don't know. I'm just very tired and I can't think through the jokes more than half a second before they come out of my mouth, which, as George pointed out before coming to air, is actually not that different to the way I normally act. So I would equate it to having a hangover. I also saw Frozen 2 this afternoon, so I've just come out of a musical.
I was going to say, you saw Frozen 2 this afternoon, so hello 2018. 2020 sucks, Adam.
When I say Frozen 2, I mean, this is the other thing, I can't even get my words out right. Frozen the musical, which is just Frozen 1, it's an adaptation of Frozen. I saw it 2.
An adaptation.
I saw that
hang on.
as well.
So you're saying that you saw Frozen 1 also?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly right. So my body's very stiff, my brain is very numb, and this hard seltzer hopefully will help.
You've had a wild weekend.
Going any wilder, Tom.
Laser
November,
skirmish.
December. It's
laser skirmish. Going to see a musical, all that sort of stuff. You've had a pretty bonkers weekend.
Yep. It's that time of the year, Tom. Everyone wants to do things, and I don't have a free day until February next year.
I love it. You're like, everyone wants to do things, so you went off sans kind of like the immediate social circle that at least I'm aware of that we partake in to do laser tag, and I assume just you and your partner went to see Frozen. So you booked out in so many social engagements, and so instead you went off and did stuff that didn't involve anyone you didn't immediately live with.
The laser tag thing's been going for months, and I've just been waiting for the pandemic to end. And Frozen, we've rebooked 3 times, so it just
was it worth it?
Had to happen. Yeah, it was a pretty good show.
Oh, cool.
You might have noticed that we are a show about newsy type stuff and things with the extended Frozen chat. Obviously, I shouldn't need to say it, but there we are.
That was Weekend Update with Adam.
That was, yes. It was Weekend Update where we just update you on our weekends. Is that the...
Yeah, okay. Yeah, pretty much.
Not like the SNL. Cool. Yeah, no, cool.
Can we get like a jingle or something for that segment? Like something just to break it up a little bit?
Yeah, we'll borrow it from NBC. I'm sure they've got one. That'll be fine.
Not copywritten.
Copyrighted reasons. So I spent a higher percentage of my time yelling at the television this week than I do normally. Was that the same experience that you guys had this week, given the news, or what?
Well, I didn't spend a lot of time watching the news on television. Yeah, I recently got to see like my family for the first time in 10 months. So I spent more time doing that this past week than watching Insiders, for example.
That was probably a wiser use of your time. Because screaming at the television is not generally thought to be an enjoyable activity, and yet it is.
Depends what you're watching.
It is the one that I seem to consistently do the most. So we'll start with the least aggravating stories, and we'll work our way through to the most aggravating stories, and then that way listeners can follow along with my blood pressure as it goes up and up and up. How does that sound?
All right, brilliant.
Yeah. Is it over 9,000?
That's good.
It is not yet over 9,000, but you'll be able to tell when it is over 9,000. I'm creating a point right now that you can
measure of scale.
Refer back to. Okay.
Is this normal? Are we starting at normal? Or
this is the normal.
Because I feel like you already operate at slightly above normal anyway. You know what I mean? Like your baseline's a bit higher than everyone else.
I'm with Adam on this one. Yeah, your baseline appears to be elevated.
Okay, so just doing a quick pulse check on the Apple Watch, and my resting heart rate is 93, which
is that high.
Is that good?
Unhealthy.
That is very, very not good.
We're not a medical podcast.
Yeah. No.
I reckon you should probably go to the doctor, buddy.
Yeah. A resting heart rate in the 90s does not sound right to
not
me.
Even joking. It is at 100 right now.
Unless you have perfected some kind of like peak lazy cardio of you're just able to be sitting at your desk working while also doing a cardio workout. I mean, no.
Under the desk,
seriously, cut the show. Go to the hospital.
Get help.
So George's baseline is 93.
Yeah, okay.
We're establishing the baseline, and this is the when we're doing a callback to this moment, this is the moment that we're referring to. Okay.
All right. Yep, fantastic.
Before George died.
The listeners at home, make sure before you proceed through the episode that your resting heart rate is 90 plus. Okay.
Nope.
Please do not take any medical advice from Unnatural Selection.
Yeah, I mean, to achieve that, you might need to take a brief jog. So, Russia, first story of the week, least aggravating, but still quite aggravating. Russia has denied endangering the International Space Station astronauts with its missile test. So the Russians were like, hey, do you know what would be dope if we blew up a satellite in orbit from the ground? And that'll be a fun thing that we do on a Tuesday. And I
mean, it sounds like fun.
Don't get me wrong. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Sounds dope. I mean, so far, totally understand.
You're right. I said it with irony, but realistically, that should be fun. Except for the fact when you remember, for anyone who's seen Gravity, space junk, not a good thing to be floating around in space orbiting the Earth.
Correct.
Yeah, because there's a bunch of
it's literally the plot to Gravity. Yeah. Like the Russians test or the Chinese, one of the two of them, test an anti-satellite weapon.
Yeah,
and it goes bad.
Oh, really? I
That's
forget.
literally-
I forget the reason why something explodes and then debris cuts through all
It's
the
an
space
anti-satellite
stations.
weapon test.
Yeah.
All right, sick. Cool.
Yeah, it's legitimately the plot from Gravity.
Okay, cool. I just remember George Clooney coming back at like a very strange time and it being a dream. Anyway, continue. The Russians blew up a satellite, I guess, in a dick waving contest.
Kind of, yeah. They just want to blow
Yep.
some shit up in space to show how dope they are, forgetting, of course, that the Cold War ended a couple of decades ago.
I do tend to forget that.
And so, yeah, space junk is a real problem because turns out even the tiniest piece of metal moving at 28,000 kilometers an hour, we actually have a word for those here on Earth. It's called bullets. Small pieces of metal that move really fast, we call those bullets. And turns out if bullets hit a space station like the International Space Station, it's not so good. So
yeah,
15,000 pieces approximately of space junk. 1,500 brains. 1,500 pieces of space junk.
I mean, that's just the big sort of hunks that they could track.
See.
Yeah, and see, obviously, you know, you got little grains.
The small ones you often even have to worry about.
Something like a little piece of shrapnel, a little thing could, you know, cut through, like moving at those speeds. I don't think people really appreciate, like, the International Space Station does a revolution of the Earth every 45 minutes, every 90 minutes, something like that. Like, it's going
pretty
real fast.
Like, that's faster than the moon moves.
It's going real quick. And like, you know, something were to strike a life support system or, you know, could just pierce the hull and decompress. Like, there's tons of bad shit that could go wrong. And like, the irony is, of the people on the International Space Station, 2 of them are Russians. So force them to have to like sort of batten down the hatches and, you know, while this was happening,
spacecraft, and they're into the, you know, the Soyuz and the Dragon, and sit there and be like, so if one of the craft that you're hiding in gets hit, then you have to go back into the station, panic, and then prepare to die, because we won't have a way to save you.
Yeah, there's no way of re-entering in a fucking refrigerator box like Sandra Bullock and somehow making it back home. Spoilers for Gravity. But yeah, there's really nothing they can do. If they get hit with this space junk, then they're cooked, basically. And luckily no one was injured. It didn't happen. But
here's the thing about space junk and space, like, stuff just moves.
Yes.
Like, there's little to no resistance. So once something's moving around the orbit of the Earth, until it hits something, it'll just keep doing it. So it'll just come back around, right? Like, it's sort of one of those, you better hope that the trajectory of any of those pieces of junk doesn't change.
It's actually really problematic because as more stuff gets shot out into space and more satellites are sort of
launched
and then go out of service and either burn up or break up in the atmosphere, or for every additional launch that happens thereafter, it makes it more difficult because there's all this shit, the space junk, space debris that they need to avoid. So if we're going to be, you know, a space going nation, like, it's just literally, it just seems like there's a ring of space junk and shit that's just keeps accreting over time, which is going to make life really, really difficult.
And Elon Musk's hundreds and hundreds of Starlink satellites won't cause a problem.
And it affects other things as well. The thing that, like, aside from the risk it poses to like people up in space and stuff like that, is how, like, Elon Musk is a good example that the sheer number of like satellites that they keep sending up there affects like physicists' ability to explore the stars.
Oh, astronomers,
like,
yes.
To see out into space or detect radio waves, or like it just influences all the instruments that we use to greater understand the universe. And I don't know, better understanding like cool shit like black holes and stuff, to me trumps Starlink working.
There is a more of a concerning probably point to this, in that there is a tendency where there is a militarization perhaps of space sort of occurring slowly. Obviously, the US has now its Space Force that it can use to do whatever it needs, and the US has conducted anti-satellite weapons tests before. Famously, I think they
in the 60s.
they shot down a satellite. I think I think they even did one recently, like as far back as the 90s, where they shot down, I think, a satellite using a rocket launch from a high flying jet fighter as well. But the probably the thing is, like, there's been reports of like Chinese. They're concerned about a particular Chinese vehicle that's in space that's been sort of cozying up to other satellites and just sort of hanging out there, which they think may be some
Can't
sort of
help themselves, can they?
satellite vehicle. It's not really confirmed what that is. It could just be, American propaganda. But, their point being is all three of the major superpowers have the capability at this point to take out satellites when they need to and
cause more space junk.
Cause more space junk. But also, like, in the event of any particular conflict, you're looking at potential chaos where not only is there junk flying around in space, but if you're taking out communication satellites and other bits and pieces, that whether or not that causes mass chaos on ground, because we depend on these systems for the weather, we depend on these systems for navigation. I mean, a lot of those satellites are in geostationary orbits; they're pretty far away, but it's in the next 20 to 30 years, like this sort of area will become a bit sort of.
Well, yeah. Do you remember that bit in
concerning
Wall-E?
Yeah.
When Wall-E takes off from Earth to head off to the Axiom, that he bursts through just this sea of
trash
around the planet. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a really interesting graph that I've got at the moment. It's just for you guys. Obviously, the listeners can't hear it, but like just sort of shows the number of total objects and fragmentation debris that are in space at any given time. And obviously, there's nothing before 1960, and it just sort of tracks up at sort of a 45-degree angle until about 2008, and then it just goes vertical. It just goes from about 12,000 total objects in space, and by 2010 it's up to like 18,000. Like, so it took us 50 years to get from 0,000 to 12,000, and then in the space of like 2 years it just goes from 12,000 to 18,000. So it's growing exponentially fast.
I'm trying to think what was the trigger point for sort of that.
It's small satellites, I think, because satellites are so small. Private organizations are now able to sort of launch them. It's much more cost effective. Like,
right, but I was wondering, was there some event or something like that around then that would have prompted it? The only like relevant thing I could think of was like the big. I remember that's when I first started seeing iPhones turning up in places. So I know an increase in GPS capability.
Yeah, but as in terms of usage, yeah. So like,
they need more and more and more, like, to booster that bandwidth.
Telecommunications, GPS on phones, like there's a number of reasons, like, weather sort of tracking. There's a bunch of reasons why you'd want to put satellites in space. And I think it was just that the technology was, by 2008, was affordable enough and cheap enough that people could just launch them much more freely than they had in the past. Prior to that, it was a really expensive thing to do. So.
In 2008, there were a bunch of anti-satellite tests. The US destroyed one in 2008 as well. So there's probably a bunch of debris from that. But...
Okay, so might have a few things, a few factors. All right, but that is I guess back to the core point of the issue of endangering the ISS. Like, wow, like, oi, quit it.
Well, Russia's already said that it's not going to really keep. It wants to get out of the ISS, basically. It wants to stop investing in it.
Well, that's one way to get out. If you just like you go, all right, so we're not going to send any more people up, and the people we do have up there, let's just rip them to shreds with space junk.
Where there's a will, there's a way, Tom.
Yeah, sorry, Yevgeny. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, sorry, guys. Cool. Well, that's infuriating.
It's not good.
Yep. Not great.
How's your blood pressure now, Joe? At this
well,
point,
it's not my blood pressure. I mean, we're just going by heart rate, so I could probably give you the Apple Watch. Probably could give you
it's probably gone down.
A reading on the blood pressure.
Yeah, maybe it's gone down. Maybe he's back to a normal resting heart rate.
I'm just looking at the just calculating the resting heart rate. We'll see what it comes up with. Measuring. 91. Okay, so it's about the same.
Okay, yeah. So
I-
still concerning.
I am as monstrously unhealthy as I was a moment ago, so it hasn't increased.
I'm as young as I ever was.
What's the line off is it the Hulk? Where he's like, I'm
I'm
always
always
angry.
angry. Yeah, that's my secret cap. I'm always angry.
Yep.
That's me.
Yeah.
So if you really want to unleash the beast, let's talk about Kyle Rittenhouse.
wow.
Kyle Rittenhouse.
I thought this would have been maybe further down the ranking of from least infuriating to most, but no, let's do it.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
Guys, justice was served. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's
okay, he went through the system, and the system was, it works. The system works.
I mean, the system worked in the sense of it does what the system does, which is, hey, the white guy gets to murder people and get away with it.
So, yeah, it's a real Sophie's choice between the next three stories as to which one is going to make me the most angry. So, so for those who don't know, Kyle Rittenhouse, I know, like, he's over in the States. Can I just call him a murderer? Like, what's he going to sue me?
He murdered people just then. I mean, I probably should have chucked an allegedly in there, but I don't know.
Can we just call him? Do we have to say allegedly?
You have to say to him, basically, it has to be. He's not a murderer. He's not literally a murderer. He's the equivalent of.
And I guess no longer an alleged murderer either.
He's not a convicted. Yeah, he's not a convicted murderer, but he's a murderer. He'll always be a murderer in my heart. Kyle Rittenhouse has been acquitted of all charges after pleading self-defense successfully in the deadly Kenosha, Wisconsin shootings that became a flashpoint in the nation's debate over guns, vigilantism, and racial injustice. So the jury came back with its verdict after 3.5 days of deliberation. Mr. Rittenhouse, now 18, could have received life in prison if found guilty of the most serious charge against him. Could have, but won't. So
did not.
What happened is during the was part of the Black Lives Matter protests. Kyle Rittenhouse came from 17-year-old came from Illinois to Wisconsin carrying an AR-15. Was there? He was seen earlier in the day, sort of cleaning up graffiti and hanging out with a bunch of militia-looking dudes. They were allegedly there to protect people's property.
Well, yeah, all the people who'd rocked up with guns being like, nah, we gotta, we're rise up against tyranny or whatever, that crowd.
Yeah, he said he was there as a medic. He was there as a qualified medic to help people, but like, he's not.
But the gun was there. I brought my AR-15 because it could be dangerous.
I gotta shoot someone in order to.
I might need to shoot someone.
In order to protect them from the violence that I've incurred, that I've inflicted against them. So what happened is there was a guy who was sort of badgering him. I mean, hardly surprising given that you're a white guy that's come to a Black Lives Matter protest and you're sort of agitating by having a gun there and sort of waving it around.
Yes.
This guy, Joseph Rosenbaum, tried to take the gun off him. And the justification, Kyle Rittenhouse's defense for having to kill this guy was that, well, if he took the gun off me, he would have tried to use it against me. And so he killed Joseph Rosenbaum, ran away. Anthony Huber, 26, sees a guy running away with a gun from a shooting and says, oh, this guy's a criminal. I need to stop him.
Active shooter.
There's an active shooter situation. So he tries to stop him. Anthony Huber tries to hit him with a skateboard, and Kyle Rittenhouse, I guess he would claim defending himself, kills him as well, keeps going, and is again confronted by another guy, Gage Grosskreutz, 28, and he turned around and obliterated that guy's bicep as well with his AR-15.
Yeah, so 2 deaths and 1 injured.
Yeah, and so it's become a real flashpoint. Obviously, one side thinking that America's obviously lost its mind and soul in this debate over guns, and the other side who are just psychopaths, I guess, who believe that this is a good thing that it makes the case for more expansive gun rights in America and open carry. And I am just so mad and furious about this verdict. It's just like, how can the precedent possibly be that a child who he wasn't even legally in Illinois, he was not legally able to buy this gun, right? But because of a quirk in the legal framework, he wasn't able to buy it. He got someone else to buy it for him, his older brother, I think, or a friend or something.
Yeah, he said that someone else bought it for him.
But he was able to carry it.
He was in possession of. He was not legally allowed to procure.
So as a 17-year-old, he's not allowed to procure this firearm, but he's allowed to carry it around and transfer this gun over state lines and wander around with it in open carry. That's all apparently quite legal. I just don't understand how the precedent could be. You can bring a gun to a dangerous situation, inflame people's tensions in an already volatile situation, and then use the justification of self-defense to murder people for responding to the danger which you have created. Like, I just don't understand how that can possibly be legal precedent going forward.
It's insane. And the other thing we were talking about when we were messaging about this topic before doing the show, where some of the descriptions have been, is he a murderer, or was he a concerned citizen exercising his Second Amendment right? And does he have one as a child? I don't know the details on that sort of front, but the idea that, as this precedent sets, that a minor has the right to bear arms that he's not allowed to buy, like this.
Because
I don't know.
This is the thing, is because of some arbitrary because the barrel of the gun was between this many inches and that many inches, he was allowed to carry it, right? He wouldn't be allowed to carry.
Really?
Wouldn't be allowed to carry a handgun. Wouldn't be allowed to legally carry a handgun because that's not for hunting. A barrel between this many inches and this many inches is for hunting, and that's why he's allowed to carry it, even though he was hunting the greatest game of all, which was man and not animals. So I'm so.
Like, with an AR-15, fuck.
Why?
The thing is, though, you got to separate the gun issue from the murder issue to a point, because as far as Americans are concerned, they're not, like, the fact he had the weapon doesn't mean he was there with an intent to kill. But
I don't know, man.
From an outside perspective, you'd be like, well, why are you bringing the gun?
Why are you bringing a gun? Okay, why are you bringing a gun? If you are there to protect people's property and you're there on a peacekeeping mission, why the fuck do you need an AR-15? Right? Nobody goes, I'm not there because, like, I fucking love Target. I got to protect my Target in another state. You bring a gun because you have the idea that you might have to shoot someone. Yeah. And there's a pretty easy way to avoid having to shoot someone for the danger that you have created in bringing a gun, which is to not bring a gun. Clearly, there are places that we cannot go in society with a gun because it is inflammatory. It is incendiary. You can't walk up to the front steps of a courthouse with a gun. Right? You can't go to Parliament and whip out your Glock. It is a provocation during something like the Black Lives Matter protest, an already volatile situation, to turn up with a semi-automatic rifle does not do anything to calm things down or help the situation. And the fact that this kid he came, created a dangerous situation, 2 people are dead, 1 left injured for the rest of his life, and this guy has 0 consequences, it's just fucked. And if the law allows that, then the law is wrong.
Yeah.
The other aspect as well is that, like, I mean, it wasn't just him that was there in a flaming situation. From memory, he was there as a part of a larger group.
Yeah, a bunch of fucking militaristic white dudes with AR-15. Okay, that's like not better.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is, the other aspect as well is like, where do you draw the line in terms of like personal culpability and how much of it is, a guy that has been put into a situation because of the circumstances around him, rather than necessarily being intrinsically evil or whatever. What I'm trying to get at.
If he's responsible enough to carry a gun, he's responsible enough to deal with the consequences of what happens when you carry a gun. If the state thinks that he is of sound mind enough to walk around with a fucking weapon of war, okay, and he's smart enough to do that, and logical enough to do that, and rational enough to do that, then when a couple of people get murdered as a result, he's old enough to deal with the consequences. If a black kid at 14 goes to jail for the rest of his fucking life for dealing a dime bag and gets prosecuted as an adult, the 17 bordering on 18-year-old who crossed state lines with a fucking gun definitely understood the impact of his actions. You don't even fucking live there. It's not even your fucking town. What the fuck were you doing there? We've just said that the precedent that they've just set is that it's okay to go and murder. Like, you are proactively going to pre-defend yourself in another state. Like, if that's not the most American fucking first strike nonsense bullshit mentality I've ever heard, like, it just makes me so mad at America. And I know that it's not all Americans and that they're good Americans and that there's, half the country that believes that this is awful and disgusting and wrong as well. But when I see stuff like this, it just makes me think like, fuck America, man. I just want to turn it off. I just want to turn off this is nonsense, but I can't turn it off because these ideas, when they gain currency overseas in America, guess what? 5-10 years down the line, we see them here. We saw it with the voter ID laws just a couple of weeks ago, right? We saw it with trying to loosen up gun restrictions.
We've seen it with James Ashby getting on the sauce.
Yes, with James Ashby and the other one from Pauline Hanson going over to the States to get tips from the NRA as to how to loosen up our gun laws here in Australia. So, like, you can't just disengage. But, like, man, it makes me real angry. And, like, I know that there's tens of millions of Americans that think that's repugnant and wrong. But also there's, like, 60 to 70 million of you that think it's great. And, like, that's a lot of fucking people to be, like, completely fucking wrong about something.
I think, from my perspective, the intrinsic causes that led up to this, like, you could say, I just think there's more to it. And I think that like, this will happen again. It happens frequently where this kind of thing happens, as far as I'm aware. Like, you hear stories about this kind of thing all the time, where not necessarily that there's race riots and there's people there trying to protect property and stuff, but the instance of people using firearms for self-defense and, but also, listen, the politicization of court trials in America as well. Like, it's a big thing. And I feel like the problem is there are intrinsic problems with the system, and both also the cultural aspect around the Second Amendment. I just don't see there's any way to undo this from happening again. I just think it's this dumb. They're stuck in this frame of mind and this system, which is just there'll be another example of this in 5-10 years. So we can get angry about it, but I don't know what it's going to do.
It's this dumb American fucking cowboy Wild West idea of, like, just got to get in there and clean her up, boys. Like, pa-choo. Like, this is what the police are for. It is not your job as an individual citizen. The state has the monopoly on violence. You as a citizen are not responsible for getting in there and shooting up a couple of people and hoping for the best. It has the inevitable effect of making everything worse, because now everyone sees a guy who's just shot someone running around. They think he's an active shooter. Like, how could you possibly tell a good guy from a bad guy in that sort of environment? It's just chaos. Like, you're inviting chaos with the dumb way that you have set up your society. And it's not as though we have not got examples of mass shootings and, like, plenty of other events and things that have gone terribly wrong as a result of doing things this way. Like, the way you do things as a country is dumb and wrong. Like, And you just, the Wild West was called the Wild West because it was fucking wild. It was a lawless society. It wasn't good.
It was the good old days, and we got
I know
a great movie that was Back to the Future 3 out of it.
You know, there's this video of Kyle Rittenhouse walking away from the scene, approaching police that are coming in vans with his hands up, and they're like, "Oh yeah, like it's all good." They're just kind of like waving him through, and he's like,
"Waved him through."
No, I just like shot a guy, so that was me. And they're like, "Yeah, we're looking for the black guys who did this." So he's like, "No, it was." It was like, and he turned himself in the next day, I think. I don't think he was actually apprehended that night. So, like, just imagine if it was a black kid with a Black Panther hat, right, that shot a couple of white kids. Okay, do you really think that fucking kid wouldn't be executed on sight? Like, do you really think? Like, you can't tell me that there's not a racial component to this as well. Like
100%. Like 100%.
And even just the way that the judge was talking to Kyle Rittenhouse. Like, the Daily Show tweeted, like, Kyle Rittenhouse sentenced to a big hug from the judge. Like, it was fucking weird, man. The judge said that the people that were killed couldn't be referred to as victims. Yeah, like the whole setup of the trial right from the get-go was completely fucking corrupt. It was treating him like it was just like a kid that kind of like, messed up is not a big deal.
What state was the prosecution in?
It would have been in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to get away with murder, go to Wisconsin.
And be white.
Yeah.
And be white. That's what I'm saying, though. Like the layers to this are so intrinsic and deep within American society. Like I don't know. George gets frustrated. I just like shake my head and go.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I hoped for better. Really,
like I don't know why you did. I don't know why you thought it would be better. I have no idea. I was like, this is obviously going to go bad.
I don't know, because there were at least some. It's the hope, and I know that sounds real dumb, but there's the hope at play at least. Like, for example, the guy who murdered George Floyd did get convicted. Like, there's the little wins like that you'd think, are we actually seeing the steps occurring so that maybe people would see this? And that, because
maybe we could live in a more just society.
Maybe people are starting to come around, like are starting to see things clearly. And just because this happened doesn't mean that they're not. But it's, you get those glimmers of hope to start to expect better. But I don't know. It just seems that I know there's a lot of factors at play here, but just step one is just doing something about the fact that any schmo in the States can just stick their dick in a situation with a big fuck off gun. Like your average schmo can be as armed as police, as any of that sort of stuff. In these sorts of situations, and it's fucked. And to hear, people like Joe Biden, when asked about it, just saying that, the jury process works is his response to this sort of stuff. It's like,
there's nothing he could have said.
He's not going to undermine his own bloody.
Right, I know there's nothing he could have said in that sense, but I mean, just they just fucking the party as a whole. If you're gonna have such a crazy two-party system, and you have one as fucking evil and just contrarian as the Republicans, just you got to grow some fucking balls and say you're going to do something about it.
I just want to be clear as well. The people that Rittenhouse shot were white, not black. But
yeah, but
I guess what we're trying to say though is
regardless, I'm saying if it was a black,
it's another layer. Yes.
Yeah. No, the racial aspect of it there is the context of the event that it took place at. For example, that he felt compelled to go and be defending other people's property, supposedly, from a Black Lives Matter rally, rather than just, why aren't you just walking out on the street believing you're Batman open carrying with your AR-15 then every fucking night if you're so caring about quote unquote crime or property damage?
Yeah, Batman, why don't you use your billions to fix up Gotham City? No. I'll beat people up with my hands. That'll be a better way of
I'll
dealing
give
with it.
people permanent head trauma.
At what point did we decide as a society that people's lives were worth less than some fucking property as well? Like
Right.
that, where it's like, oh, people deserve to die. If they're smashing up a 7-Eleven, that's fucked. That's obviously not good. Those people should go to jail for that. But guess what? You don't get to be Judge Dredd. You don't get to be judge, jury, and executioner and murder that person for the crime of petty larceny, for which they would go to jail for, months, a year, if they were prosecuted.
Like, congrats, you killed a couple of people, but here's a medal for saving Target.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure Target, with their fucking insurance scheme, really appreciates you murdering some kids. I don't know. It's just like, when did we decide that human life was fucking meaningless? That the sovereignty of the individual, for all these people on the conservative side of politics that talk about freedom, okay, that talk about the right to life. If you're a fetus, as soon as you're out of there, they're like, oh, fucking get him, kill him. Like, it's just...
Keep in mind, I'm not sure exactly what the situation was in Wisconsin throughout the pandemic, but, it's the same country that has 600,000 people dead or whatever it is from COVID, where just because a bunch of people were like, I'm not going to wear masks and I'm not going to socially distance because of my rights. Like, there is no... There is no social responsibility. It's, I don't know. I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know what you guys were expecting. It was always going to be shit. I mean, you look at the same country that, like, O.J. Simpson, got off just because it was a politicized trial that really probably should have been a mistrial.
No, I mean, I know what you mean in terms of, like, I've got not expecting anything different, but I feel the day that still doesn't make me really angry is a day I'll be taking a good hard look at myself of, like, why do I no longer care? Like, no, like, it still pisses me off despite not expecting any different.
Yeah.
It's wrong.
I think it probably just reinforces that.
How about the fact that it's
Australia,
just, like, wrong? It's wrong and broken that someone gets to murder a couple of people and walk free, and undoubtedly is going to have an entire career predicated on this act of violence. Like, he's going to be talking at CPAC conferences, and you know what I mean? Like,
I think the Onion had a great gag on this of that Carl Rittenhouse sentenced to 35 years of CPAC appearances.
Yes.
I was like, yeah, it's hard to crack a gag about any of this, but you did it. You did it, the Onion. Well done.
You did it. Everything is just as awful as we think it is. I don't know.
The other thing that I'm not sure about is why there hasn't been more questioning around the militia aspect. Like, I've looked at a couple of articles that talk about the militia's actually being illegal in Wisconsin.
Well, and that was the other aspect too, that, like, what's frustrating, I know he wasn't charged with these things, so, it's not just an automatic you broke it, whatever. But even, okay, they ruled that the shootings are in self-defense. How about that he had a gun that he wasn't allowed to procure, that he crossed state lines and breached the curfew?
Yeah, you can get
like,
a
I know
fine
you can't feasibly arrest.
If you cross state lines with a piece of fruit that you're not supposed to have, you can get a fine, you can get a summons to court, but apparently shooting a couple, if you hit someone with your car, you would get something. It'd be negligent driving. You'd get, 3 months or 6 months. If it was just like you accidentally killed someone, there'd be more consequences than this. It is such a joke.
Yeah.
Like,
it's just the fact that, like, we know that he did these things, and I know it's, like, not feasible to arrest every single person who was breaching curfew on that day, but you did it, like, this guy did turn himself in, and we know that he broke that law.
At least get him on that. Yeah, it's funny because, like, I've been on a jury before, and in Australia, like, if you can't get him with the vest thing, then you can get him with the other things, and there are other charges that are brought up at the same trial, and you get assessed on. And the same thing happens in America. You get assessed on all those counts. So the one thing, I'm not sure about from the article is whether or not.
I don't believe they charged him with
that.
So, like, they were pursuing, like, murder. or
The
at least
cooked thing about it
culpable
is like,
homicide, whatever.
if you successfully kill someone in America, it's almost an advantage. Like the thing that he almost
Successfully feels like the wrong word.
well,
but
you know what I'm saying. Like if the person ends up dead, they can't be there at trial to testify against you and to, like the thing that he was actually really at risk of getting charged for or getting like convicted for was the assault, not the murders, right? Not the defending himself. He was on the hook for those. They thought they'd get him, but like the area of actual contention that ended up being in the trial was the assault on the guy who shot in the bicep.
Yeah, the guy survived.
Right, that was the only thing he was really at risk of getting convicted for, as the trial sort of grinded on. Because the other guys were dead. They weren't there to defend themselves or to say otherwise. Like they had footage, and but like it's too late. The guy's dead. Like what are you going to do? And it's weird that almost counts for the assault. Almost counted for more than the murders because it was just like, oh, that was clean cut sort of self-defense sort of thing.
A way to sort of, I guess, examine his intent and frame of mind in relation to the other charges, perhaps.
I'm just like so dismayed. Like,
yeah, it's
and it was just ridiculous the way the judge just seemed like a fucking Looney Tune, honestly, man. Like the way he was talking about. Yeah, he didn't allow photos to be blown up and presented because he went on this weird tangent about like
pixels, right?
About pixels, and he goes, when I save messages on my phone, text messages, I take photos of them and then email them to myself, and that's how I save messages. And then if you blow them up, they're all blurry, sort of thing. So that's why you can't blow you. Like the guy was just an absolute fucking Looney Tune.
You can't zoom in on pictures to look at details because that adds pixels.
Yeah,
and that alters the evidence. And it's like, that's not how any of that works.
Nope.
Do you believe that's how that works? You fundamentally should not have your job.
Yeah, it's you literally just watch too many episodes of CSI where they said enhance, you fucking moron.
Yeah, but they don't even do but they don't do that in real life. So
No.
like, if we could do enhance, then okay, sure, we're adding pixels somehow, but that's not what happened.
It's not how you just found some pixels.
Yeah, like it baffles me that judge is allowed to.
He was like singing.
Judge cases.
He was like singing at one point during the trial. Like, I'll do a little music. And
fucking what?
Roy Wood Jr. posted a clip as though he was like a bailiff as though he was a bailiff in the court. He was the guy from the Daily Show. And like, is this still a murder trial? Is this Field of Dreams? Am I seeing that? Like, is everyone else seeing this? Like, just like the crazy shit that was going on. Yeah. He was like singing some sort of song during the trial.
What the fuck?
It's like, yo, is this still a murder trial or? Insane.
Will be a TV show.
Insane. Absolute
will there be a TV Netflix drama on this?
Oh, there'll be a season of American Crime Story.
Yes.
The People v. Carl Rittenhouse.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
So George, where's your heart rate at now?
Oh, do you want
I'm not wearing my smartwatch. I should fucking check mine.
All right, Tom. Yours is much lower than George's. I can almost guarantee it.
Yeah, I might have like crept up towards his base.
See, I definitely feel more stressed, but it says my heart rate's at 80. So it's actually calmed me down. That story.
What is going on?
I don't know if I believe this thing.
Yeah, all right. Let's not trust the Apple Watch for medical advice.
Should have asked you after you blew up. After I tried to sort of potentially inflame the situation on purpose.
No, yeah. While George and I are like just expressing our outrage and frustration with this intense like social political situation, Adam's just like, I wonder if I can get George's heart to explode.
Hold on, George. I'm gonna let you finish, but
yeah. So, like, I'll just go, I wonder if I can get George's heart to explode. George, the $1 trillion coin will save us all.
Just salt base some white privilege in there. And
how about we just don't inflation? Discuss.
But look,
if
you like idiots, there's another story full of idiots, which might get your goose tickled.
There's no shortage of idiots, either in America or here in Australia. Thousands of people can't hang out with their mates this weekend because they are busy protesting the lockdowns here in Victoria. Sorry, mate. I'd love to come to the pub, but I'm busy standing on the steps of Parliament threatening to murder Dan Andrews. So... But everything's open. You can go anywhere. You don't even need to wear a mask anymore. No. It's important that I spend the weekend protesting my freedoms and not going out and hanging out with people.
Yeah. It's important that I'm protesting the freedom, like not having the freedoms that I currently very much have.
Yes.
Or maybe that they don't have because they're not getting vaccinated. So maybe they don't have the freedoms that the rest of us have because they're dum-dums and haven't gotten the vaccine if they are eligible.
So, yeah, during this week, thousands of people gathered at rallies across the country as part of an international day of protest against COVID-19 lockdowns and vaccine mandates. And so during this last week...
international. How'd it go around the world? I'd love to see those numbers.
Yeah, fucking shithouse everywhere. And the... so part of these demonstrations happened over the last week or so. Some of them occurred where people were threatening violence against political figures with the addition of some nooses, some
old-fashioned gallows.
Yeah, some fake gallows that they brought to.
I mean, if you build a giant thing out of wood and you hang a piece of rope tied in a noose in it, is it fake gallows?
I mean,
if it walks like a duck.
Sure, I don't know if they, having seen, well, at least the footage I saw, they didn't look like functional gallows, but it seems like a distinction without much of a difference.
Yeah.
At this point. So yeah, and lots of people, the woman was quoted on the news saying she can't wait till Dan Andrews is dancing on the end of a rope, and lots of violent, awful political rhetoric, which is fucking disgusting. But don't worry, Scott Morrison came to the rescue and said he absolutely denounces that kind of rhetoric, but he can see their point.
But he is sympathetic to people who have had a gutful of governments telling them what to do, I believe he said. Which reminded me, what did he say when all the youth were protesting his inaction of climate change rather than being in school? I think he told them what to do.
That's right,
and told them to go back to school. So I don't know, where's the sympathy for them, ScoMo, you fucking hack?
Yeah, I love the idea that, people... the people don't like governments telling you what to do, says the guy who closed the federal borders 2 years ago and has only just recently opened them up. That seems like government telling people... I remember when all those Australian citizens weren't allowed to come home when the Delta outbreak was ravaging India. And they said, hey, I know you're citizens, but you can't come home because go fuck yourself. That definitely seemed like government telling people what to do. I love this, that the federal government abnegates all responsibility for dealing with the consequences of the pandemic, just forgets to order some vaccines, plunges us all into a second year of lockdown, and then goes, man, really sick of these governments telling us what to do. It's like, the reason...
You worry, George, because next election time, they'll be spinning that positive story.
The reason that the state governments had to continue to tell people what to do is because there was the Delta variant and coronavirus running amok because your government your federal government had not supplied vaccines. That's the whole reason that 2021 as a year was basically a write-off, was because we didn't have fucking vaccines. So,
yep.
How can you abnegate responsibility for dealing with the pandemic to the states and then go, man, people are really mad at the states for dealing with the pandemic? The galaxy brain on this. The guy's either a fucking moron or he's a genius. Like, I can't...
Something going on, I think, with it's Frydenberg's done the same thing. Like, he's flip-flopped around on it, but, every time, they can get a couple of points on the local
They're
Labour.
flirting with the neo-Nazi vote. That's what they're doing. They're flirting with the anti-vaxxers and the neo-Nazis and everyone else because they think it might get them a couple of percentage points in the seat of fucking Hawthorne or something like that. Like, it really is that simple.
And that's the thing is that this protest movement is probably, it's morphed a little bit potentially from what it was, say, 12 months ago, where there are now reports that there are neo-Nazis that have effectively taken hold of some of these movements, particularly in Victoria, and are driving it at this point. The thing that everyone seems to be pissed off about in Victoria, because it's obviously an international thing, as they say. It's International Freedom Day, or whatever the fuck they're claiming. But in Victoria, the main thing that they're on about is this bill that the Labor government's trying to pass,
the
which
bill.
changes
It's a power grab. Haven't you heard, Adam? It's a power grab. Dan Andrews is trying to take over the whole fucking country. Man, it's a fucking conspiracy, man. He's trying to take over, mate. He's trying to take over the fucking state, mate.
The thing that doesn't work for them in this instance is that the bill does shift power, emergency powers for a health crisis anyway, from the chief health officer to the premier. So a state of emergency.
To the health minister, to the relevant minister.
Health minister, sorry. Well, it goes from a bureaucrat to a
political figure,
government.
Which, like, actually, that part of the legislation, I'm totally fine with. I think, like, having political accountability for the decisions that are happening about the health of the people in the state, that makes sense. And that brings Victoria as a state into line with all of the other states. So, like, that part of the legislation, I'm totally fine with. There's probably some questions, like, we sort of got to divide it up into two sections. There's the legitimate criticisms of the law, and then there's the completely illegitimate criticisms of the law, saying it's Dan Andrews trying to corporatize Australia. And we've got a whole bit on
Chairman
that. Which
Dan,
we're going to... Chairman Dan trying to take over control. And this is the Sky News sort of media bubble that my mum is in. She's like, oh, it's just disgraceful. The new law, the new law is just trying to take control. It's just a power grab. I'm like, okay, mum, what's in it? And she goes, it's all about grabbing power and taking control. I was like, you literally just heard a 3-second blurb on Sky News and you're repeating it. Like, you actually have no understanding of what's in this law. But besides the point, like, aside from the Rupert Murdoch ginned up fake outrage ecosystem nonsense, like, there are a few things in there where it's like, we could probably use, like, in shifting so there's this, let's go back a little bit. There's a deadline coming up in the middle of December, which says these emergency pandemic powers that you keep extending. The legislature here in Victoria has said no more extensions, right? You're going to have to come up with a proper legislative framework to deal with this. And this has been...
You can't have a state of emergency forever.
Right. So they're saying, okay, we're going to give broad powers to declare a state of emergency if there's a reasonable, idea that there's a pandemic happening and we need to institute these kind of processes. Allow the, curfews or lockdowns or these sorts of things. We need to have a proper legislative framework. We can't just rely on the and then the problem is it becomes, every time these emergency powers are extended, it becomes a political flashpoint and a talking point for the right-wing media to attack Dan Andrews for grabbing power. What this really does is it brings us in line with other states and how they handle pandemics, and like very similar to New South Wales. And I don't see anyone calling, Dominic Perrottet dictator Dom, although the opportunity is there, just because of the enunciation, the alliteration with D. So there's that. There are some legitimate criticisms about how it's structured and the oversight that's necessary. There was a letter from whatever it is, the Victorian Bar Association, saying, hey, we need more oversight and more protocols. I understand that those have been brought in as part of the legislative review process in Parliament.
Suspensions have sort of forced a couple of agreements as well. So you're looking at reductions in fines for breaching public health orders, a stronger threshold for declaring a pandemic, strengthened human rights protections, the right to protest to be enshrined in regulations, which I found interesting, guaranteed resourcing for an independent oversight committee, and more fast publication of health advice and other stuff. So,
and one of the things, publication, like actually publishing the health advice. So saying we're doing this based on health advice, actually making that part of the process of sharing that information with the public. I think that's you can't pull a
Gladys and just be like, hey, so what was that? Like, you're doing this on the health advice? Yes. What advice was that?
Show us that. Yeah.
It's like, can you show us what it is? What is?
Huh?
The health advice. Yes. We're going in circles, Gladys.
Please no. So there's a bunch of positive changes. I think all of those proposed changes from the crossbench and, that they've put through are reasonable changes, except for the ability to protest. Like, I feel like that needs to be clamped down during a public health crisis. That makes sense to me. That's probably the only one I don't agree with. But like, other than that, it's a completely reasonable legislative response to say, hey, if we need to extend these powers in future, or if this happens again, we need to have a proper framework in place for dealing with it. The problem is that it doesn't matter what you do as Dan Andrews. the whole media ecosystem's been mobilized against you to...
There are people at work that are fairly sick of him as an individual. And this is the other thing, is that this is the thing I don't get, really, to be honest. In Australia, we've sort of shifted our media bias towards the American system of individuals, and we still don't have this concept in our head that's the party that is the government. You get rid of Dan Andrews, Molino, whatever his name is.
James Molino, yeah.
Who probably
and
will
guess
have
what?
the same policy.
It's all the same people in the same
party.
fucking jobs, the same ministers in the same positions, all doing the same shit with the same staffs working under them. Like, it's all the same shit. So, like, the fact that you hate Dan Andrews, I'm sorry you, like, don't like his big ears or whatever, but, like, it's actually got nothing... Him and his personality, and you not liking him is irrelevant. But, like, if it was James Molino, they'd be attacking James Molino. You know, the person in charge is irrelevant. Yeah. They're just a lightning rod for all the manufactured animus of the Murdoch press, right? Like, it could be your sweet grandmother, who's also the best leader in history. It could be Julius Caesar, Marcus Aurelius, and they'd still be like, fucking dictator Marcus, what a piece of shit. Like, going, you know, killing all these Gauls. Who does he think he is? It doesn't matter who it is. That they'll call you a socialist piece of shit.
Knifed by his own party, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's an apt political knifing for Julius Caesar. It doesn't matter who it is my point. Is that they'll go after you anyway.
I do think that, you know, like, it'd be very interesting next Victorian election. I've got a funny feeling there'd be enough, even though the Liberals are like a wet bag of sand, the amount of
wet bag of sand without the bag.
Without the bag. I feel like there's enough sentiment, anti-Labor sentiment, anti-Dan Andrews sentiment, that it could potentially cost them the election.
Well, and they're fanning the flag. I don't know. I don't know. None of us knows really how it's going to go. I also think by the time the next election rolls around, sentiment will be really different. The economy's chugging along again. Yeah. People are happy. Like, I also, you know, I'm aware that people have really short memories. And I think most of the thing that drives voter sentiment is just like name recognition. That's why Trump did so well, is because he had 100% name recognition before he even launched his campaign. Everyone in America knew who this guy was.
I mean, it's all marketing, right?
Matthew Guy really doesn't have that much of a presence. He's interchangeable with Michael O'Brien and Matthew Guy, who preceded him. Like, it really is just like milquetoast white dude. I don't know that people really like that. My mum, even though she hates Labor, couldn't tell you who the Liberal leader is right at the moment. So, like, name recognition really does count for something, right? And we've had a lot of FaceTime.
That's why we have this as Adam referred to earlier, that, like, the kind of discourse and media coverage around a lot of these issues, a lot of these like policy hatreds or any of that sort of stuff is around individuals, because like putting a face to things works.
Yeah.
Like, someone smarter than me can explain why our brains work that way, but it works.
It helps to have a boogeyman.
It's all about connecting, man. Connecting to faces and identity.
The thing is, like, you can drive someone's popularity down, but by talking about them constantly, you make them the locus of attention. It's the Trump effect, right? Everyone was shit-talking Trump for a good 4 years, but he still nearly won the 2020 election, right? Because he was just at the center of every story in the media. So yes, you galvanize people to hate you, but you're also really galvanizing those people's supporters by giving them that
the
figure
SEO to your advantage,
right? Giving that figure.
I stand with Dan.
Right.
Anyone seeing that going everywhere? Like, how many of those people would be such chest thumping Dan Andrews fans
if he weren't being attacked?
Weren't for the intense attacks being leveled against him by people we really don't like.
We spent a year and a half with this guy on our television sets for like 60 to 90 minutes a day, every day. Even if you hate him, like, you are aware of who he is. And the other guy does not have that level of name recognition. So when you go to the polls, humans are dumb. And they will pick the thing that they recognize and know more than the thing that they don't recognize and don't know, even if they don't love it.
It could work the other way, where they go, "I know I don't like that. I'll take a gamble on the other."
It could be
average white guy.
It could be.
Like it could flip both ways.
If you've got, and that's why a two-party system is so good at capitalizing on negative partisanship, is because, okay, well, I know I hate the Democrats. Who's the Republican? Great, I'll vote for him, or vice versa, right? So it can work that way if there's only two options. People don't vote people in as much as they vote other people out. But I still think there's enough entrenched support in Victoria and enough, the Liberals are losing ground on, because they've spent the LNP federal government has spent the last year and a half giving Victoria a good kicking. Like, I don't think people are really necessarily inclined to vote them in, and they're losing ground in these key sort of previously blue ribbon Liberal seats because of issues around climate change and things like that, federally as well. So I don't know. I don't think it's as clear cut of a swing against Labor as you might think it might be.
You wait, just to circle around this as well, to our earlier discussion about, political, people forgetting things pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You wait until January when Scott Morrison brings out his new billboard or whatever it may be. There'll be a bunch of billboards. There'll be some social media campaigns. There'll be the ads that are authorised. Will come on camera. And they start claiming victory over the pandemic and the success of every single policy that they've been dragged kicking and screaming to the table for, as well as a bunch of things that they had nothing to do with, such as things that are really the states are responsible for. You wait until they start claiming all of those things to try and win the election.
Yeah, I mean, they will claim it. As to whether it'll be effective, I don't know. I actually, like, the polling is not good for the Liberal Party. Like, the longer they leave it, the worse it looks for them with the pandemic.
I think that we're going to get to January and everyone's going to go,
On a two-party preferred basis, Labor is ahead of the LNP, of the Liberals, which is unusual. But on a leader preferred basis, Scott Morrison is ahead of Anthony Albanese. So it's that classic thing of, like, Labor just has a bit of a charisma problem with their leader. But, in terms of who people actually prefer from a party perspective, it is more leaning towards Labor now. So I think they're probably going to want to try and declare something sooner rather than later. So I'm thinking early next year. I think it's probably too late in the year to have an election this year. But I also like...
Oh, hell yeah. Like, we're 6 weeks out from, like, Christmas, New Year's? So, like, no. Because they have to have at least 6 weeks to campaign.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen this side of the year. I think early next year. But it's... I don't know. I hate that every discussion about this comes down to, like, when's the next election going to be? Because, like, I could...
my fault, to be fair.
I could really give a shit about that. Like, I like talking about the stories and the policy. I think the political horse race stuff is, like, it's very easy to cover, but also, like, generates a lot of heat and not a lot of light. Like, I'm not illuminated by talk about the horse race because it's all fucking subjective.
Love the horse race. I'm all about it.
That's maybe why no one listens to the show, is because we don't cover the horse race. We just cover substantive policy issues and rant about $1 trillion coin and inflation. But maybe
a thing that struck me this week, just as a bit of a sidebar on this issue, because I went to visit my family in Canberra for the first time in ages, and just seeing Canberra compared to the rest of the country was enlightening. Like, just to like, everyone I spoke to, and I mean, yes, there'd be my social bubble politically, but, like, I know, like, there are people that I know who are, like, not of the same, like, political leanings as me, and while it is a much more, maybe it's a Labor seat and all that sort of stuff, and maybe a bit more left than some other parts of the country, but it's by no means, like, just a swathe of all people believing all the same, like, things politically, but they are at 95+% double dosed. And even, I was explained a bit complicatedly, they are beyond 100% single dosed. They just did it.
How do you go beyond 100%?
Because so you have people like students who are from interstate or from other areas where their home address is in their home state, like New South Wales or wherever, because they base the percentage of population on something like the 2016 census. So
Yeah.
there are people who are in the ACT who get vaccinated in the ACT who are not part of the 100% figure. So it's like they've done that 100%.
ACT
and
is
there
so
are
good at
other people in
vaccination.
there
They're vaccinating
also
other
getting
states' people.
But the way my mum explained it to me as well, like when she brought this up, was that they're not reporting it like that because they don't want people to distrust the figures.
Mm.
As soon as someone says, like, we're 101% vaccinated, everyone's like, well, this is all bullshit. And I'm like, it's so infuriating.
You get that
that's how
judge from
works.
the US who's like, it doesn't make sense.
Like, that's not how it works because people are simple. But it was just amazing to see that when I looked through, like, both the protests that were happening this week and in previous weeks and all that sort of stuff, I noticed Canberra never came up. Like, there's always a demonstration in Brisbane. There's a demonstration in Adelaide. There's the ones in Victoria. There's ones in Sydney. There's all that sort of stuff. I never really heard of a big demonstration in Canberra. And people in Canberra were talking to me about, like, holy shit, have you seen, like, were you at any of the stuff going on, like going to work or whatever? It's like, no, I haven't been in the city in, like, months and months and months. But just Canberra went, all right, get it done. And they did. Everyone got on board. Like, regardless of their political leaning, everyone was like, we understand. In order to get, like, to beat this thing, we have to get the injections. And it's like, it showed me that it's not impossible. That it's not impossible for, like, a society to function.
To just, like, get around it. I think there's a few things at play there, right? Like, obviously ACT is a city, and it's also its own separate little... not a state or capital territory, Australian capital territory. So it's a territory, but it's nestled within New South Wales. Right. So it's not as though it is a city sort of and a state at the same time. It's quite small, right? And you've got wealthier, educated, more liberal people there than, I say liberal as in lefty, than the rest of the country by and large. So it's not unusual to think that they, obviously, just given the amount of people, that they could get around it and get it done faster. With that said, like, even with all the rural areas and stuff here in Victoria, like, we've passed the 90% first dose threshold.
We're going to hit 90% double dose. I don't know if it's happened yet, but I thought it was this weekend.
Shortly, something like that. Yeah.
So, and that's why restrictions changed like 2 days ago, because they were like, yep, we're about to hit it. So we'll just do it from Friday.
So even for a state that's really populous, you've got people in far-flung reaches of the state, like New South Wales and Victoria. Like, we've still had really high vaccination levels comparable to other states. So, like, Queensland's just crossing its 70% vaccination threshold recently, and they really need to pick up the pace because I've got a holiday booked for over Christmas. So let's get it moving, Queensland. But
that was a bit overzealous of you.
Let's get it going, guys. Come on, pick up the pace. There's a number of different factors at play, but, like, certainly it is indicative that Australians broadly are pretty sensible and want to get the vaccine, or are open to being sort of gently encouraged to get the vaccine because of mandates and restrictions around their job and things like that. And it shows that they do work. So, certainly,
I don't know.
These anti-vaxxers that we're talking about don't represent. They are a minority of a minority view. Like, we're talking about a fraction of a percent of people that really are ardent morons like this. But they do exist and they have a voice, and it's annoying.
But yeah, it was just nice to see that it was possible. I felt very proud of my hometown.
Yeah, so you should. It's a massive achievement to have achieved, like, basically complete adult vaccination coverage.
And they did it so quick, even with young kids. Like, when that opened up, they hit high percentages so fast.
Yeah,
and that's percentages, not like the number of people isn't quite the point. it's the
It just shows most Aussies were keen for it. This whole idea of vaccine hesitancy, I think they really were, they were trying to manufacture consent through the media, saying like, oh yeah, prepare for the fact that like 40% of people aren't going to be on board with this. And meanwhile, Aussies get access to Pfizer and they're like, fucking stick it in my arm. Fucking give it to me. The vast majority of people were keen.
Yeah, people just furiously shelving Pfizer.
Yes.
Stick it in me ass. Anyway,
What?
Shelving is
that
when
is
you
what shelving is.
insert something into your anus.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Is it effective?
I believe it is
Wow.
a way of ingesting, how you say, pingers.
Mm.
One may shelve them.
On that note,
Speaking of dumb things, do you want to put that tweet the
yeah,
video?
it's too long now because we're already running at an hour and 15. But like,
Oh shit!
I'm just gonna, I'll retweet it from our Unnatural Show Twitter page. But there's this amazing thread from a Facebook page that, it's just astounding that people actually believe this stuff. But yeah, there's this sort of conspiracy theory that, in 1999, Australia was corporatized and given an ABN and sold to America or the elites or something, and then Dan Andrews has been charged with treason, and that's why packaged.
He's been served papers to appear in the magistrate's court on charges of treason over Australia being a company, not a country, and the whole government's in on it.
Yeah, but obviously Dan Andrews would be the first to go. So that means
naturally.
That means he's out.
Yeah.
And if none of this makes sense to you as the person listening to this, don't worry about it. You're correct. It's just that the content is nonsense.
Yeah.
Also, treason. I feel like treason. The magistrates' court's the lowest level of court. I feel like treason would definitely go to the county. It's one level higher than the magistrates' court, surely.
James, who's there for speeding in a 60 zone.
Oh, mate, what are you doing? Oh, yeah, I was doing 60 in a 40 zone. Oh, mate, that's fucked. What are you here for? High treason.
High in treason of the highest magnitude, and corporate espionage. You name it.
It's all the Queen's in on it, obviously.
Of course.
It's a whole thing, but
it's because I was sworn in by the Queen that it's treason.
My favorite comment about it was from Andrew P. Street. This is classic sovereign citizen legal word salad garbage, given a hot 2021 anti-vax remix. Yeah,
nice.
But we'll share that on our Twitter page at Unnatural Show if you'd like to read the whole thing. If you'd like to just have a little brain shit, it's a very entertaining one. On that note. We have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. It's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and motherfucking TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Twitter at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
You can follow me on Instagram at AC Dream.
And you can follow us all down to the Apple Watch Health app, which is currently reporting in at 92 beats per minute, 97 beats per minute, 99 beats per minute. Oh, no. Thanks for listening, guys.
99 straight to...
Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week. I need to do some cardio.
Almost like the closer we get to finishing, the higher his heart rate goes.